Um, hmm. So I am in a slightly vulnerable space, and I'm sharing in a way that I haven't shared for quite a long period of time. I tend not to speak directly from my personal experience anymore. I tend not to drop into any story that I've been through. And yet I remember and know how important the story is to express and resonate for people that may be in that space, and to give hope and faith and an understanding that healing is possible and that it can happen very quickly. And I forget, I forget to tell my story. I don't tell my story. And I guess maybe the biggest part is there's probably still shame pieces around my story. I still have shame around fragmented parts that I haven't completely reconciled. And what is important to share? You know, what is important to share in your story when it comes to raising the consciousness? Is it giving tools, or is it sharing the story? Is it all of it? You know, I don't know if I know yet, but I do know that there was a period of time that it didn't feel true for me to share personal experience. And so this morning, also, if you're watching now, I would love to know if you've jumped on this live on Facebook. I will be putting this recording on YouTube and Instagram. Yeah, if you're watching live now, do a hashtag live present, and let me know what's inside. I think many people have gone back into normal routine. School holidays have finished. Wait, is it Australia Day? I was like, I don't even know the day. Um, yeah, so allow yourself to just, arrive into this, because this is a triggering subject. It is something raw, real, vulnerable for me. It may bring up some emotion in you, because I'm going to speak from that place of vulnerability within myself. And I'm going to share what's important to share about it for the awareness of yourself, so you can have the confirmation of your own inner being, and hopefully grab some tools and information on how to start this healing process within yourself, and some compassion. Um, so, just arrive into your body. Maybe put your hand on your heart, on your belly. Maybe you want to give yourself a hug. Just love on yourself a little bit. Take a couple of deep breaths. So I am talking specifically about suppressed memories, and the bringing of suppressed memories to the surface is a part of our healing process. This is a part of the process that uh, is non-negotiable, because it has to be witnessed to be reconciled. So even if our mind has blocked it out, there is a process of when a trauma or an experience has happened and it's been too much for the soul essence to deal with, the fragments break, and we separate from ourselves as a coping mechanism, which is what disassociation is in this 3D paradigm. Um, I am no stranger to trauma. Um, Maybe that's why I have a little bit of knowledge and wisdom. Um, I am not going to tell you my life story. It's not relevant, but I will share very briefly that I grew up and I was in a home with narcissistic abuse and emotional abuse, and I guess physically implied abuse, and um, we went through different natural disasters. There was mental health issues. There was drug-induced psychosis. There was uh, addiction. There was just like, how many things were there? Rebellion, drug use, looking for love in all the wrong places. rape, um, uh, yeah, I mean, in anything that you could possibly think of in this human experience, I've probably had a little delving in that at some point, and um, it's quite fascinating to look at. I remember doing a TikTok once where I just pulled out a few instances along my timeline, and it was just a couple. I think I had like 10 examples of different things that had happened to me, like going through family court 3 times. Like that's a pretty interesting piece of trauma that most people um, haven't experienced. And um, yeah, the different things along along the way that are still hard for my logical mind at sometimes to put together, as how I managed to move through so many different things, having an eating disorder, um, yeah, lots of things that I don't talk about. But this specific one is around the memory of what started coming up for me about 3 months ago. And the reason I want to share it is because suppressed memory will start to surface. And the process and the understanding of suppressed memory and how your brain will function in that process and how it can look when you're starting to bring up something for healing. So if you didn't watch the conversation in the YouTube with Jamie Welt. We were talking psychology, and I shared little bits and pieces about trauma and fight, flight, freeze. One of the important things to know in regards to me, specifically in this experience, is that I have an anxious avoidant attachment style. Now, I'm very aware of my anxious avoidant attachment style. Basically, that means that when something would trigger me, I'd go into a state of anxiety and trying to fix it. And if it became too much and I couldn't fix it, I couldn't cope with being in this anxiousness feeling within my body. It was overwhelming that I would shut it off. There was too much danger and I would close it. Now, I remember when I first went into my first mentorship program, and it was a 7 day intensive, and I started to understand that anxiety is actually awareness, and it gave me a completely different understanding to my anxiety. And that the anxiety that I was experiencing was because it was triggering a trauma response that was telling me something was dangerous, whether it was in my mind as a story, whether it was a body somatic thing, or what I started to recognize was that it was always awareness. And I didn't look at my awareness of what I knew. I downplayed my intuition and my ability to see into things. And through this process of recognizing I didn't actually suffer from anxiety at all, I was just hyper aware and I could see and know and experience things. I was able to start to discern when the anxiety came, what was it trying to tell me? Like, what was the message of the anxiety? Now, most people that are highly empathic have become that way because they've trained themselves to be that way. When we talk about, I guess, at a zoomed out perspective of being infinite in our potential, infinite in our being, we're all empathic, we're all in tune with energy, we're all gifted in that space. But when you have someone who is an SPC, highly sensitive person, when you are empathetic to that degree, it's because you've trained yourself as a child to be empathetic to that degree. You've trained yourself to be so in tune with people's emotions, behaviors, and the energy around you to keep you safe and protected from things. And when I really understood what that meant for me, and I remember hearing it as a piece, and I was like, nah, I was just born empathic. Like, my life wasn't that intense that I had to train myself to be so in tune that it meant danger. Like, I, although experiencing, sexual abuse and rape and different things that had happened to me over my timeline in my early childhood years, I didn't believe that my experience was that dangerous or traumatizing, that my empathy and my anxiety had come from needing to protect myself. until I started having lost memories. So suppressed trauma, basically what happens to the brain is when something's too hard for the child or the being, depending on what timeline the trauma happens at, it fragments. So in the brain, you go into a place of separation or disassociation, and that part of the memory just vanishes. You leave your body. You leave your body because it's too painful and too hard to be in your body, because if you did, you wouldn't survive. You wouldn't survive the experience. It would, your nervous system would probably end up having a heart attack too much for your physical bodily experience, and that's where the disassociation takes place. But the issue with that is that when we have suppressed lost trauma, and if you don't remember your childhood, and if you have very limited parts of memory in your early years, then it's because you've blocked a lot of it out. And this is no secret in my life. This has been no secret in my family. My family knows that I don't remember things, and it was always just blamed on trauma and a dysfunctional family relationship. However, I and my family didn't know about some of the things that were going to be unfolded. And this is my truth, and I believe this is the truth. However, when you bring up subconscious and lost memory, it can be very hard for not only you to process, but the people in your field. So it's coming to a place of whether or not it's a necessary piece to share too, depending on your family dynamics and who's involved, and what is more loving for you, really. Because a lot of people have trauma for telling family members, or you hear it often that they spoke up about some sort of abuse that took place and they weren't believed. So they've experienced double the trauma. And that is not something that you want to do while you're going through a healing process of revisiting lost memories. So really sit with whether or not it's safe to speak into this, if it is something that's coming up for you. But the lost memory, as the disassociation takes place, it disappears, but it stays in your body. So it's stored in your body. You have a somatic trauma piece. So wherever the experiences were, as in your cells, they're in your energetic makeup, in your physical being. So even if you logically don't know why you've gone into a specific response, your body does. Your body remembers. And this is really challenging for people because they don't know why they're behaving in a certain way, or why something's triggered them. They don't know why something would be, why all of a sudden they were fine and then they weren't. And it's the uncovering of the awareness and allowing a safe, secure environment to go into the parts of the subconscious mind to bring these pieces up. Now, I had no idea that I was about to get sent into a whirlwind of lost memory, as if I didn't have enough to heal this lifetime. But I was triggered into it through what I tend to usually get triggered into it is in close romantic relationship, where I met somebody and my anxious, there was a few different pieces around dishonesty and hiding things and lying, I would say, is the themes. So for me, my biggest values are transparency, openness, communication, and speaking into the microscopic truth. So it's the opposite pole to what I know helps my nervous system. So the reason that communication is such a big thing for me is because I know that if someone's not communicating, because of my hyper awareness and my empathy and my ability to read energy, if someone's not communicating, I can feel that, and it sends me into a trauma response. And this is where trauma from sometimes lost memory will come through, and you don't realize that the trauma is in your body with a specific piece that's asking to be witnessed and seen. So for me, it was just always focused on, well, you can't lie to me because you just can't lie to me. And so to avoid my own discomfort in my experience, my own anxiety, my own anxious, avoidant, somatic nervous system response, I just made it a need in relationships that communication always takes place. It never had got to the point of actually looking deeper as to why. Like, why does this trigger me so much when somebody is being dishonest and lying to me? Like, what is that about me? Up until yesterday. But it's been this 3 days of 3 months of slowly unraveling this lost memory, and through different things and different ability to lean into discomfort. So different triggers were coming up where I was feeling suffocated. And so I allowed myself to go into the suffocation and remembering a memory of my stepdad choking me, telling me not to tell anyone. And the response that this can have on your physical being when you don't know this, it's like, oh, well, I can't speak the truth. I have to hide what I say, and feel suffocated at times when you want to speak about something. It has a massive effect on your action, on your current reality and experience. So the fight, flight, freeze response is really the trigger to looking at something deeper. So for me, in the last 3 months, I've been and so lovingly, gratefully guided by by myself, and going into a lot of this on my own, because I have a lot of tools and I've been doing this alone for a long time, but now I have support. And there has been moments where it's been too scary, and I have gone into the 3-year-old child part of me that is in this of like, it's too much, I can't do it, and being able to be held in a safe container and space for me to go into those parts of my mind and to clear the fear and go into the memory. And when those memories started to surface, I knew that they were true, even if my logical mind was like, your logical mind sometimes wants to be telling you that you're making something up. When you have a memory or a vision, it's like that it can't be. It's a lot for your cognitive brain to start to comprehend is a reality and why things were the way they are. Once it's settled and integrated and you like allow it, you can't unsee it, and the puzzle pieces of parts of your life that didn't make sense start to fall together. They start to make sense, and they start to be like, well, that, yeah, right, okay, that actually fits that, and that makes so much sense as to why I would be like that. But that trigger is where we have an awareness. So we often say it's not the trigger that's the issue, it's what you either do after it, but I believe it's what you do when you're in it. It's like, what do you choose to do when you're in a trigger? Do you choose to sit and stop? And allow yourself, and after time, it does take time to get to that point of awareness, of observing yourself in a trigger, observing yourself fully act from a trigger and seeing what that does to you and others. And it's a training. It takes commitment, it takes discipline, and it takes time. And the healing process also doesn't have to take a long time either. So there's the awareness that you have to lean in and have the discipline to do it, but it's also the paradoxical side of knowing that it doesn't have to take forever. You just have to be willing to get to those parts within yourself, and you'll only be given what you're ready and you're able to handle. But what I want to explain is the process about when you have a trauma. Your attachment style is created at that time to help you survive through your life, right? So mine specifically was starting to remember sexual abuse and physical abuse at age 3, where I, at that time, remember being a whole, beautiful being and then shattering and fragmenting into what's called anxious attachment, anxious avoidant attachment style. So the anxious is being heightened in awareness, right? The awareness is seeking, where is everything going wrong? And then the avoidant is shutting down the body because you can't cope with it. So closing everything off and disconnecting, which is the disassociation. And that is how I coped through my life, over and over and over and over again, and still at times have that wanting to come through, and I don't allow myself to do that anymore. I allow myself to witness it and lean into it and be with it. But the thing that was very interesting was that when this trigger came up for me yesterday, it was because I knew, I intuitively sensed that someone was not concealing something. So there was, I wouldn't say dishonesty, but I would say there was something being hid from my awareness and my communication, and there was energy and fear attached around communicating and speaking that into with me. And so my anxious trauma response went straight up, and it was quite intense. And I just knew automatically, because I've been in it so many times, someone's lying to me, someone's not telling me the truth in this. And I and I went into a place of awareness around that. Now, in the past, I have called people out. I have not said anything and tried to trick them and wait for them to come to me. I've done a lot of unconscious things around it. I have completely shut people out and not even given them a chance to communicate. And now I choose to be more aware in my communication styles and bring that to the forefront of, this is what I'm experiencing, this is what my awareness is, and this is how I'm feeling. And open a space to talking to someone, because I am not, I'm not always 100% right about what it is. And we are humans, and we do have fear, and we do hide things from each other because we're scared of responses, abandonment, being left, or hurting someone. And we will often not be able to be transparent until we can be transparent with ourselves. But regardless of that situation, that wasn't what was important for me. What was important was, I realized again that I was in this attachment style. I was not in my healthy attachment style of being centered and grounded within myself. I was in a place of anxious, and the avoidance was right there of like, give me one thing and I'm going to push you away. And the level of protection over something that I didn't feel should have that much, from a logical place, didn't feel should have so much energy behind it. And when you choose to lean in, and I want to explain what leaning in is, because because in the past, when I first started awakening, people would say, go and sit with it. And I got really frustrated and really annoyed and ask, what is sitting with it? What does that even mean? Like, what is sitting with it? And I didn't know how to sit with something. I didn't know what that was. It took me quite a long time to understand that sitting with something was sitting in a place of myself and breathing and relaxation, and sitting with the topic and allowing the awareness to come through, looking at the feelings that were there around the topic, looking at the possibilities, looking at the trauma, looking at the beliefs, looking at the collective, sitting with the collective energy of what that was, and whatever mind, feeling, thoughts, spiritual awareness would come through around that. And so the same thing with leaning in. Unless you've been leaning in for a while, you probably don't know what leaning into something means. But leaning in is when you have a trigger, like I did last night around, that sent me into a very intense fight, flight, freeze response. And leaning in was not about the other person. It was not about leaning in and being like, well, what are you not telling me? And let's talk about this and let's communicate this. It was leaning into myself. Leaning in is like leaning into what's happening inside of you. So often what we do is we will attach to something. So we'll fight, or we'll try and fix or fall or pull at something in this push-pull dynamic, or push it away, rather than being with what's alive inside of us. And what was alive inside of me was a level of anxiety and awareness an awareness that I had to protect myself because there was something dangerous, but I didn't 100% know what the danger was. And that was my coping mechanism as a child, was this anxiousness, learning empathetically to read everything around me so that I could keep myself safe and protected. Now, when I decided to actually lean into that, so what that looked like for me was laying and sitting and breathing and coming into my body and asking, where does this anxious energy come from? Why do I feel like there's such a strong danger and dishonesty and lies? Like, what is that? Like, what is the trigger in that? And what happened was I went back into a memory where I was aware of myself as a child, watching my stepdad communicate with my mom and lying about everything that was happening and that he was doing to me. And so I was aware of the lies, the dishonesty, and the energy that goes along with that because I was a connected, in tune, high vibrational child, like all of our children are. And it was something that I learned was, well, if that's happening, then that's not safe. That's danger. That means danger because I knew what was happening to me. And the the so that was when I started to, I guess, put a belief together in my mind that when there's someone who's not telling the truth about something, or they're misguiding or manipulating or gaslighting or using information that is not of transparency and open communication, that is danger. Like, that's life or death, And this is how it has severely affected me. And I didn't know. I didn't know that it was that extreme from that moment until I leaned into that memory. What came up for me was a lot of sadness that my mum didn't know. She didn't know. And she didn't see. And so there was a child that was, I guess, hurting and fearful and felt unprotected and unseen. And the process of going through forgiveness for my mum because she didn't know. And the awareness that is gained, oh, okay, so every time I'm in that level of anxiety, it's programmed from such a young age of 3 that it means this. And it's also understanding, yes, you have awareness, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's the worst thing in the world. Sometimes I believe, in my truest belief now, because I don't suffer from anxiety anymore, and I'm super aware, is that when I have an anxious feeling, anxiety actually does mean there's something not right. There is something in the awareness, and it's like, what's not right about this situation that I'm not willing to see? What is there that I'm not wanting to look at? And we have this great ability to deny truth. And I have been the absolute master at painting illusionary stories to keep me in a world of safety where I haven't wanted to see the reality of people and myself, and caused a lot of pain and suffering because I haven't been willing to see the dark or the shadows in the past. And my shadow work has been absolutely magical and transformative. But that is my interpretation of anxiety. Then you have excitement, which is the same vibrational feeling. It shows up in your body the same. So excitement is sometimes felt as what you'd want to do in a trauma response to anxiety is shut it off because it's too much awareness of danger, or possibly like, I don't want to look at that. And instead of recognizing that about anxiety, then what happens when there's excitement? There's actually expansion. But we confuse the things together because we're not aware of what our feelings are and we don't sit with it. It's like, oh, actually, I'm super excited about this. But my brain wants to categorize this as being something that's dangerous in my body because it feels the same but instead I just need to breathe with it, which is leaning into excitement and the intensity of expansion and energy in the body. Um, so although I went into the memory of like where this anxious part of me came from, and I was able to go through a forgiveness process, I knew that that wasn't complete. And I decided to make the space for myself this morning to fully go into what time space of my experience did I fragment and create an anxious avoidant attachment style. And I want to talk to you about the process. And I want to talk to you about the process in case you're at a point where you do feel you could hold yourself in this, and or if you feel like maybe not going to the first point of fragmentation of sexual abuse is the first place you want to start healing, but maybe you just want to look at healing some self-love stuff, or you want to start healing your discord around money. I mean, really, to me, all trauma is just, it's all trauma. There's no trauma that's more painful than another trauma, because any separation from the self is equally painful. You can't, there's no, there's really no distance. It's like if you're separated from yourself, that hurts, that's suffering, that's pain. And I don't believe that we can compare our trauma to another person's trauma. It's just a level of disconnect, and that hurts. So um, the process around this reconciliation of my anxious avoidant attachment style was it is a process that you can use for any trigger that comes up. And I have gone through a lot of my healing on my own. And I know that I did that because I needed the tools so I could do it for others. So that what's taken me 18 months to heal my womb space of disease and sexual abuse and relationships and powerlessness and past lives and ancestral and all of those different components that took me 18 months of work to do, I can do with people in between 1 and 5 sessions. You know, a few hours, whereas it took me layer after layer after layer of understanding the energetic body and the mind and different meridians and cords and different activations that get lost within trauma, where we give away parts of ourselves because we don't believe we're worthy of them in those moments. And so this process is a process that I'm sharing because this is the process that I use for myself. And it's a process I use with clients. And I feel that it is value, and I feel that I want to give as much value as I can for the overall collective to come into a place of healing. Not even healing, remembering who you really are. And so this process is simple. It's not hard. We just have to be willing. And it's like the layers of the onion. We have the layers of the onion that we say until we get to the core of the onion, the trauma won't disappear, or that it's not reconciled. And I believe this to be true because I've witnessed it in energetics and multidimensional and within my own levels of experience. And often we're only working on the surface layers. We don't tend to keep going through this process of delayering and movement. Like my layering of the onion is kind of more like this. But what I would suggest is when you decide you want to give this a go, and if you have someone to hold space for you the first time so that you can do it and feel safer, that would be much more beneficial, because you are working in a part of your brain that you don't normally function from. So you can't do it when kids are running around you. You need to make the space to be with yourself and in a level of silence and feeling your body, so that you can start to feel the energy, the beliefs, and anything that's coming up to be witnessed and released. So it's making a space somewhere. Mine is in the bath. I feel safe in the bath. I feel held by the waters of the Divine Mother, and it allows me to feel gently rocked. And I mean, I call in my energetic support team, Archangel Michael, any other guides, say like Yeshua, or ancestors and any different goddess energies that may be present that might want to come and hold space for me. I set up a grid and a flame. I like to have the fire element there to help burn and transmute any lower densities. So it's a safe space in whatever feels good for you. Is going to help you to feel more comfortable and safe in your own body when you're doing a process, and especially if you haven't done something before. And it's coming into a place of theta or altered state of consciousness where you start to communicate with parts of your brain that we don't allow, which is breathing. So breathing, just taking 3 deep breaths into the body, starting to breathe that getting into a real relaxed space, keeping your eyes closed and making your awareness aware of your own awareness. It's where you start to feel your atoms and your molecules moving, you're breathing, you're letting go of any stories, you become the observer of your thoughts. And you ask the identity or your ego or your separate mind to just be an observer. It's okay, you're safe, right? That yourself and your nervous system, your body, your mind know that you are safe. And you are just going into feeling and thought forms. And as you're breathing, and once you get to a place of feeling very relaxed without falling asleep, going up in traveling through the dimensions, you're going to start with whatever the piece is that's alive in you, the suffering, and you ask that piece to give you the awareness of what it is. So whatever the trigger's been, maybe your neighbors next door have a dog that barks and it drives you absolutely mental and it's like really triggers you. You go, in this situation, what's the first layer I need to be aware of? And you ask. That's what you do. You ask your brain to show you. You ask your mind and the question, and then you just allow whatever the first thing is to come up and be witnessed. And it might be a color, it might be a vision, it might be a belief, it may be an energy, it might be an emotion, and you witness it, and then you consciously see what it is, and you just let it go. You can visualize it. You can say, I consciously choose to release this. You can just hand it up. It's in the intention of, I see this and I release this. And releasing can be emotionally, and then you go, what's underneath this? And you get what's under that. And it might have been, it might be anxiety. And then you start to feel that you're going into some other sort of memory. It's actually got nothing to do with the next door neighbor that is barking. And you're starting to feel some anxiousness in your body. And you ask your brain if there's anything you need to see about this. And if it's a no, then you hand it up and you give it up, whether that's through visualization, you're giving it up, or you just, I consciously choose to release this from my energy field. And it's not hard, easy, it's simple. All of this is so simple. To heal something, you just have to witness it. For something to be real, it has to be seen. And you go through this process of going layer by layer, witnessing, which will come with either vision, belief, story, emotion, and then you surrender it. And you surrender it. And then at some point, what will happen is you'll flip. Instead of all the negative emotions, you'll start to flip into the positive ones. And you'll get to a point where the positive emotions come through, where you might get forgiveness. And then you might get allowance or joy or peace or love. And you understand at that point that those are the things that were lost in that moment, in that experience, that have required to be called back. So you just call them back. Call back from out all time, space, dimensions, or any parts of me to do with joy that was lost during this experience. I call back to my being now. And they will come back to you. And then you do that until you get to the point of an endpoint, because there's no more energy moving, and you'll feel a lightness and the energy dissipates and it settles. And you ask, is there anything else that when you're asking, you're talking to yourself. You're talking to your higher self, your own God consciousness, and you're asking what else needs to be done to rectify or reconcile the process and allow whatever that is to be witnessed. And sometimes it will be just lay there for 15 minutes and let the energy move. And then at 15 minutes, you're going to feel it, because all of a sudden, all this energy is moving and then it's not, and it's space. Now, anyone can do these things. It's just taking the time and space to go into it. And I'm not saying that we need to do it alone, because had I had known people that could hold me in these spaces and help me through some of the darkest, scariest parts of my healing journey, then I would much rather have been held by another human that I felt safe, loved, and supported with. But that wasn't my journey. My journey was to become that space for people. My journey was to do it alone. My journey was to go into those depths of trauma and discord and illusion and move through my healing process so that I can be here in this space and offer my support and what I've learned the hard way, and offer easier possibilities, offer spaces of guidance, mentorship, get people to recognize their own innate gifts, their own understanding of energy, their own understanding of how to communicate with their mind. That's what I'm here to do. I had to do it alone to be able to gain this remembrance myself. So I hope that some of what I've shared has given you some further insight into me and into the possibilities within, into yourself. And if you're feeling as though you do want to be held in a journey of release, because as we release, we actually expand. It's a simultaneous process. As I'm releasing, I'm also downloading, which is something which is really beautiful. Is when you can come to a place of recognition of instantaneous release and download. So I often get action steps or knowings and moving forward as I'm in the emotional release as well. And it's not about learning tools or becoming a certain thing to live your purpose. It's just about removing the layers that are on top of who you actually are. Your true essence is your gift. Your true essence is where you will remember your magic, your medicine. You don't need to learn that from anyone else. It's right here. I love you. Have an amazing day. I look forward to hearing all the comments and pieces. I love interaction and hearing how you receive this. I love